ever since I started coaching 6 years ago, I've been looking at the question, what's the difference between coaching and therapy? And I've come up with loads of different solutions, and I'd just like to discuss them. And in seeing this discussion, you will get an idea of who I am as well. So I'm kind of introducing myself to anyone that doesn't know me already. So originally, I started coaching 6 years ago after being in the coaching world for, well, now 20 years, so 14 at the time, and also having had quite a lot of therapy over the years as well. So when people ask me the difference, I would say, okay, therapy is gentler than coaching. Coaching is more confronting and dynamic. Therapy, I believe, is more looking at the past and untangling it for the purposes of healing. And I see coaching as more future focused, and where necessary, we do delve into the past, but not to hang out there too long, just to sort of understand our behaviour patterns and then move on. Therapy, I think, is incredibly helpful for people who've really been traumatised, been massively abused, had really difficult things that they're trying to unpick and be able to heal from and move forward. And it can be very comforting en route. Definitely, I've experienced a lot of comfort from counselling and therapy. Coaching, on the other hand, is a lot more challenging, and where therapy is more, probably errs more on the side of analysis, coaching errs more on the side of creativity. There's a bit of analysis, it's not like gung-ho Pollyanna stuff. So both has a look at what's going on, and then coaching, I think therapy is more for healing and coaching is more for creating. I want to say at this point that I would love to hear your opinions. This is all just my opinion, and I'd love to hear your experiences, your thoughts. Come and argue with me if you want to. It's great to hear other perspectives, and I may well have missed some out or got some wrong. So, full disclosure, I don't know what I'm talking about. So that said, so therapy, I think, is very educational. It helps you to really understand yourself and gives you a lot of information and teaches you stuff like attachment styles, what narcissism is, and loads of different psychological terms and psychiatric terms, some of which I've been introduced to in the counselling and therapy that I've had. Coaching, I think, on the other hand, rather than being based on education, information and insights, is more towards transformational work. So I think with coaching is more focused on, if it's relationships, repairing them and then creating amazing stuff, creating a future that is beyond what we could have believed possible before, and it's very positive and uplifting and dynamic and confronting as well. Both are insightful. I have had, as I said, a lot of counselling as well over the years, less so recently. And the counselling that I've had was focused mainly on two areas. One was my relationship with my mother, and the other was my relationship with my fiance, who then became my husband, so we had more counselling then. And then counselling towards the end when we chose to go our separate ways in a really good way, actually. So both use jargon. Therapy is quite interesting and language that you probably have to study and understand, whereas coaching jargon is more vernacular. So we look at questions like, who are you being? And you might say, I'm being defensive, or I'm being protective, or I'm being vulnerable in a good way. Whereas there's a lot of language and concepts to learn in coaching, psychology, counselling, therapy, psychology, and so on. So I see coaching as to unpick issues, not so much for the purpose of apportioning any blame, well, absolutely not, but for taking our power. And when I say power, I don't mean power over another person. I mean being in our personal power so that we can treat ourselves well, nourish ourselves well, and nurture our relationships with other people and work out who we are in the world. And eventually, a lot of people that go through coaching find a passion and really apply themselves to making a great difference. So it's about growth, and then eventually about contributing to others in whatever way. Loads of people have always wanted to do something, whether it's travel somewhere, do a sport, set up a charity, write a book, whatever it is. So coaching takes you towards those kind of goals. And if you don't have them, that's fine too. Sometimes people discover passions during the process. Yeah, in terms of relationships, coaching is really about reparation. Whereas this may be a controversial thing to say, but I know that when I was having counselling and therapy regarding my relationship with my mum and then with my partner, I did feel quite often very comforted and often, how do I put this, quite self-righteous, because counsellors and therapists seemed to be very sympathetic and understanding and helping me to understand why I reacted in certain ways and why the other person did certain things. Whereas coaching is so much more about taking responsibility. So who was I being that had me be victimy or cry, or there's nothing wrong with crying, but go into a hole of self-pity or something like that, or react, or fight with somebody. And the questions like who are you being is so powerful, and it's flipping confronting, it really is. And at this point I'll tell you, the first time I did any personal development in the coaching realm was 20 years ago, February 2006, and it was a landmark forum, which are amazing courses and flipping confronting, and there are about 150 to 200 people in the room with a landmark forum leader who's an incredible coach. There are loads of them in the world. And we were invited to come up and talk about our complaints. And I thought, finally, I'm going to be heard and vilified. Sort of vilified, that's not the right word, vindicated. And I stood up on stage and I took the mic and I told everyone what a terrible mother I had. And poor me, and I've been so damaged and all this stuff. And I thought she would really give me a load of sympathy and soothe me. And she didn't. She said, "You are being a silly little girl." And I was 40 at the time. And that was like mortifying, and I hated her for several hours after that. That was fairly near the beginning of a 3-day programme. And then once I sort of got off my high horse about it, I realised that she was probably right. And I was absolutely being a victim. I was not taking charge of my life I was 39, nearly 40, as somebody of this age with 4 children and a husband. And I was like sucking my thumb and poor me, because my mother's so terrible and she's damaged me so much. But what I got from that work, and it took me a long time because I was very married to my views, but eventually I got that who I was being was a flipping victim, and I was keeping myself small, and I was blaming my mum for my entire life. And it's through the coaching world that we come out with this. So anybody who goes into coaching has really got to be ready to self-examine. Whereas my experience of therapy is more, it's about soothing, it's about vindicating, it's about sometimes the therapist takes a side of their client, maybe over the person who's absent. And at best it's soothing, but at worst I didn't really find it was helpful in terms of repairing relationships. Now this is the point at which I want to hear from you, therapist, and say, Fran, you've got that wrong, because I want to be wrong on this one. Right, have I got any more notes before I conclude this one? So I talked about coaching empowering the client, and it empowers the client to empower other people as well. Whereas my experience of therapy was that it got me to be more controlling, to control myself and to have control in spite of the other person. Whereas coaching is about bringing you closer and seeing what's in the way and taking it all away. And defensiveness and offensiveness were looked at in 2 different ways, and victimhood again in 2 different ways. So where I am now 20 years later from this, my relationship with my mum looks like I'm in charge of who I am around her, and I've got to see what an amazing person she is. And she's not a goddess, and neither am I, and she's not perfect, and neither am I. But I can laugh, I feel relaxed. I used to feel scared, and it wasn't because she was scary, it was because I chose, unwittingly, it's not my fault, but I chose to be scared, and I chose to see her as a bully, and I chose to rally my friends and relations, and we all sort of gathered up, we did colluding, which is really fucking horrible, to make her wrong. And then, of course, that was a pretty horrible experience for her, who, everybody was nice to her face, but behind her, there were phone calls, conversations, visits, all sort of everyone's soothing each other. And that ain't great for having good relationships. What is great is self-analysis, going forwards and going, I put my hand up, I've seen you as a bully, I've been behaving like a complete victim, I've even made up stories in my head about who you are. And now I get to see, like, she has a life story, I have a life story. And like, yeah, she's fucked me up a bit, I've fucked up my kids, you've fucked up your kids, your parents fucked you up. Parents do the very best they can with the resources they have. My mum always used to keep saying that to me all the time. And I go, yeah. But it's true. You know, we don't give birth to babies and say, right, I'm going to fuck you up. Never. No way. We have our egos brought into play from both being, you know, a child and a parent and friends and being a boss, having neighbours. You know, every scenario in which there's human interactions, we behave a certain way. And although, you know, we are different with different people, generally underlying we are that same person. And it's easy to say, oh, with my family, I just can't get on with them, it's really hard. But I'm okay with my friends. That's basically because families trigger our inner child because we haven't dealt with the wounds and the behaviours that we did then. So update, yeah, so my relationship with my mum is, yeah, we giggle. And she does stuff that I used to get really scared by, and now I just think, oh, bless, that's her. And I'm sure I annoy my kids the heck out of them. I do feel that they have the space to tell me, and I would take responsibility for their experience of me. Sometimes it's kind of they've made up the stories a little bit, and sometimes it's absolutely true. So I would never say, oh, that's not true, you made it up, because for them it is true, as for me it was true. Update on the marriage. So 6 years ago we got divorced and we're now really good friends. I stayed married for 25 years and I was unhappy for all that time, but that was partly because I believed that what you do in life is you grow up, you get married, and then you're unhappy. And I fulfilled on that story. Stayed married a long time because I was really scared of falling out, and I'd seen other people getting divorced who ended up falling out, or, you know, each of them fighting over the children and bending their ear and so on, and then finances and destitution. So I stayed for all the wrong reasons, and I have since many times apologised to him for that. In the end, you know, who we are now is not the people that we fell in love with, and what we want out of life is different from what each other wants. And so choosing to be co-parents and friends works so much better. So basically, awful marriage, awesome friendship. But I wasn't able to do that until I was strong enough to go beyond my fears. So I've just told you my fears. And I realised that through the work that I'd done, the coaching and everything, I could create life how I wanted it. And how I wanted it was to have a nice divorce that worked well, where the kids were happy. And our kids are like unbelievably proud of us. Every time I get like Mother's Day, Christmas letters, birthday cards, birthday letters, they always write letters because they know I love that. They always say how proud they are of what we've created and how incredibly glad they are that we got divorced. And I'm also really glad, and it took a lot of courage to do that, to move beyond my fears, and now my life is so much better because I took that leap. I realised that that courage is within me, and I've done loads of other things, like I've started my coaching business, like I bought my house outright. I've done adventurous things. I've taken my musicianship up a level. I'm singing in gigs, playing in gigs. I played with in a 3-piece band for Kaylee last week. I would never have been able to do that before when I was, you know, a scaredy cat, a victim, and so on. So yeah, that's me telling you the outcome of coaching and my experience of counselling, and I'm really up for hearing from you about this, okay? I'm just going to say it. Loads of love to everyone.